While Lao Tzu was obsessed with water, the Tao Te Ching explained, "Water is everywhere, yet it never competes. It nourishes forests without demanding recognition. It shapes mountains without possessing strength in the ordinary sense. It flows around obstacles instead of confronting them directly, yet over centuries it transforms landscapes that no sword or empire could ever conquer." Among all the images found within the Tao Te Ching, none appears with greater significance than water. Again and again, Lao Tzu returns to this simple element, not because it is mysterious, but because it reveals truths that human beings consistently overlook. In a civilization that admired military victories, political influence, rigid social structures, and visible displays of authority, Lao Tzu pointed instead toward rivers, streams, rain, valleys, and oceans. To many readers, this seems poetic. To Lao Tzu, however, it was practical philosophy. Water was not merely a metaphor, it was evidence. Nature itself was demonstrating the principles by which life flourishes, while humanity insisted on following the opposite path. The more people struggled, the more exhausted they became. The more rulers tried to dominate, the more unstable kingdoms became. The more individuals attempted to control every outcome, the more anxiety entered their lives. Meanwhile, water continued flowing effortlessly, accomplishing everything without appearing to force anything. This paradox lies at the heart of Taoist thought. Strength often disguises weakness. Softness often conceals incredible power. What appears passive frequently proves unstoppable over time. Throughout history, civilizations have praised hardness. Soldiers wear armor. Kings build walls. Businesses reward aggressive competition. Individuals are encouraged to fight harder, push further, and dominate every obstacle standing before them. Yet the Tao Te Ching quietly asks a disturbing question. If force truly solves everything, why does humanity remain trapped in endless conflict? Why do victories so often produce new battles? Why do successful people still experience emptiness? Why do those who possess the most power often fear losing it the most? Lao Tzu believed these contradictions emerged because people had forgotten how reality actually functions. Instead of cooperating with the natural movement of existence, they attempted to impose their own desires upon it. This endless resistance created suffering. Water demonstrated another possibility. It never argues with gravity. It never complains about changing direction. It never insists on remaining where it once was. It simply responds perfectly to each situation. If placed inside a cup, it becomes the cup. If flowing through a canyon, it becomes the river. If frozen, it waits. If heated, it rises. Nothing about water is rigid, yet nothing can permanently stop it. This flexibility fascinated Lao Tzu because it represented the living expression of the Tao itself. The Tao cannot be grasped through intellectual theories alone. It cannot be imprisoned inside definitions. It reveals itself through patterns visible throughout nature. Water became the greatest teacher because it silently embodied every principle that words struggle to explain. When modern readers encounter passages praising water, many interpret them as encouragement to remain calm or emotionally balanced. While this is partly true, Lao Tzu intended something much deeper. Water demonstrates how existence functions at every level, from personal growth and relationships to leadership, wisdom, conflict, creativity, aging, and even spiritual awakening. Every characteristic of water becomes a lesson. Its humility reveals the power of lowering oneself rather than seeking constant elevation. Its patience teaches that true transformation rarely happens through immediate force. Its adaptability demonstrates intelligence beyond rigid planning. Its persistence shows that consistency often defeats intensity. Its transparency reminds us that clarity possesses greater influence than manipulation. Even its silence carries meaning. Rivers make noise only where obstacles exist. Deep lakes remain quiet. Likewise, the deepest wisdom rarely needs to announce itself. This explains why so many chapters within the Tao Te Ching repeatedly return to flowing water. Each return invites readers to observe another dimension hidden within something so ordinary that it is easily ignored. One of Lao Tzu's greatest insights is that profound truth rarely hides inside extraordinary phenomena. It hides inside ordinary reality viewed correctly. Human beings chase complicated answers because they assume valuable wisdom must appear mysterious. Yet the Tao constantly reveals itself through everyday existence. Sunrise follows night without argument. Trees grow without ambition. Seasons change without negotiation. Birds migrate without strategic committees. Rivers reach oceans without maps. Everything fulfills its nature because everything follows the Tao. Only humanity repeatedly resists it. This resistance creates internal division. Instead of responding naturally, people become trapped inside endless calculations, comparisons, expectations, and fears. They attempt to predict every outcome, protect every possession, defend every opinion, and control every relationship. Ironically, the harder they attempt to secure life, the more fragile it becomes. Water offers another path. It secures nothing yet loses nothing essential. It clings to nothing yet reaches everywhere. This way of living often appears counterintuitive because modern culture glorifies control. From childhood onward, people are taught to dominate circumstances, outperform competitors, maximize productivity, and eliminate uncertainty. Although discipline certainly possesses value, Lao Tzu warns that obsession with control eventually disconnects individuals from life's natural intelligence. Water reminds us that genuine mastery does not consist of controlling everything. Instead, it consists of responding appropriately to whatever appears. This distinction changes everything. Rather than exhausting oneself resisting reality, one learns to cooperate with it. Rather than forcing opportunities prematurely, one develops patience. Rather than fearing change, one begins flowing with it. Such principles sound simple until life becomes uncomfortable. It is precisely during uncertainty that water becomes the greatest teacher. Consider floods after heavy rains. Although water appears destructive, it merely follows available pathways. Human beings often build in places nature eventually reclaims. Likewise, many personal crises emerge because people attempt to construct identities, ambitions, or relationships against the natural movement of their own lives. Eventually, reality reasserts itself. What appears as disaster often becomes correction. Water reveals this impartiality. It carries no personal agenda. It rewards neither ego nor status. It simply follows truth. Another reason Lao Tzu admired water lies in its relationship with emptiness. Rivers exist because valleys exist. Cups function because of empty space. Homes become useful because rooms contain emptiness rather than solid walls. Water naturally seeks these empty places. Symbolically, wisdom also seeks emptiness. Minds filled with certainty cannot learn. Hearts filled with pride cannot receive compassion. Leaders obsessed with authority cannot inspire genuine loyalty. Emptiness creates capacity. Water teaches this continuously. By descending into low places avoided by others, it nourishes everything above. In this inversion, Lao Tzu discovers one of the Tao's greatest paradoxes. Those who willingly remain humble eventually become indispensable. Throughout this exploration, we will examine why water occupies such a central role within the Tao Te Ching. We will discover how softness overcomes hardness, why humility becomes strength, how patience transforms obstacles into pathways, why flexibility surpasses rigidity, and how the simple act of flowing naturally may represent one of the deepest spiritual practices available. None of these lessons belong exclusively to ancient China. They remain astonishingly relevant today. Modern anxiety, burnout, social conflict, and endless striving often arise from the very habits Lao Tzu warned against over 2,000 years ago. Water still flows exactly as it did then. The rivers have not forgotten the Tao. Perhaps humanity has. The invitation of the Tao Te Ching is therefore not to worship water, but to learn from it. Every river becomes scripture. Every rainfall becomes instruction. Every wave demonstrates principles older than civilization itself. Those willing to observe carefully may discover that life's greatest teacher has always been flowing quietly beside them. Water is soft, yet nothing can defeat it. The first reason Lao Tzu continually returned to the image of water is perhaps the most surprising. Water appears weak. It has no fixed shape, no sharp edge, no visible muscles, and no desire to conquer anything. Yet despite possessing none of the characteristics that human societies traditionally associate with strength, water eventually overcomes nearly everything it encounters. This paradox becomes one of the foundational insights of the Tao Te Ching. Human beings tend to evaluate power by immediate appearance. Large armies appear powerful, massive buildings appear permanent, loud voices appear confident, aggressive personalities appear dominant. Water challenges every one of these assumptions. Place your hand into a stream and it offers almost no resistance, yet the very same stream, given sufficient time, carves valleys through solid rock. This transformation does not occur through violence, but through persistence. Water does not attack the mountain. It simply continues being itself, day after day, year after year, century after century. Eventually, even granite yields. Lao Tzu saw in this process a profound truth about life itself. The strongest force is often the one that refuses unnecessary conflict. Human beings frequently exhaust themselves trying to overcome obstacles through greater intensity. When resistance appears, they respond with even greater force. They push harder, argue louder, compete more aggressively, and tighten their grip on circumstances. Sometimes this succeeds temporarily, yet such victories often require enormous energy while creating equally powerful resistance. Water demonstrates another possibility. Instead of opposing obstacles directly, it moves around them. If a boulder blocks its path, the river does not become frustrated. It simply flows beside it. If cliffs prevent forward movement, water patiently gathers until another opening appears. Nothing about this response resembles surrender. It represents intelligent adaptation. Over time, what seemed like an immovable obstacle often becomes reshaped by the very force it failed to recognize. This principle applies far beyond rivers. In relationships, people frequently believe winning arguments creates harmony. Lao Tzu suggests otherwise. Rigid insistence often produces greater distance, while gentle listening dissolves hostility. In leadership, authoritarian control may create obedience for a season, but genuine trust grows through humility and responsiveness. In personal growth, relentless self-criticism rarely inspires lasting change, while patient self-awareness gradually transforms character. Water quietly demonstrates these realities without speaking a single word. Another remarkable quality of water is that it never confuses flexibility with weakness. Modern thinking often assumes that changing direction indicates indecision or failure, yet nature reveals precisely the opposite. Survival depends upon adaptation. Trees bend during storms because rigidity causes trunks to snap. Reeds survive hurricanes that uproot mighty oaks because they yield rather than resist. Water becomes the supreme example of this living flexibility. It possesses no permanent form because reality itself remains dynamic. By refusing rigid identity, water remains compatible with every circumstance. Lao Tzu recognized that many human problems arise because individuals cling desperately to identities, expectations, and opinions that no longer correspond with changing reality. They attempt to preserve yesterday instead of participating in today. Water never suffers this conflict. It belongs completely to the present moment. Whatever reality requires, it becomes. This effortless responsiveness reveals extraordinary intelligence. It is not passivity, but perfect cooperation with existence itself. The Tao Te Ching repeatedly emphasizes that softness overcomes hardness. At first glance, this appears irrational. Experience seems to suggest otherwise. Hard objects crush soft ones. Steel cuts flesh. Stone resists pressure. Yet Lao Tzu invites readers to extend their observation beyond immediate events. Time changes every equation. Hardness eventually becomes brittle. Steel rusts. Stone erodes, empires collapse, institutions disappear, bodies age. Meanwhile, water continues flowing. Its apparent weakness conceals infinite endurance. This endurance arises because water wastes no energy pretending to be something it is not. It neither competes with fire nor envies mountains. It fulfills its own nature completely. Human beings often suffer because they compare themselves endlessly with others. They attempt to imitate personalities, lifestyles, careers, or achievements that contradict their deepest character. Water teaches authenticity. It never apologizes for flowing. It never wishes to become wind. Its fulfillment comes from expressing its own nature completely. Lao Tzu believed people would discover far greater peace if they abandoned compulsive comparison and instead aligned themselves with their own genuine path. This alignment requires courage because society frequently rewards conformity rather than authenticity. Water reminds us that reality itself ultimately favors what is genuine. Even the ocean owes its greatness not to domination, but to receptivity. Every river willingly enters the sea because the sea places itself below them all. Its greatness comes through humility rather than superiority. This astonishing reversal fascinated Lao Tzu and becomes the foundation for many later teachings about leadership, wisdom, and spiritual maturity. Water always seeks the lowest place, the hidden power of humility. One of the most revolutionary observations in the Tao Te Ching is not that water is powerful, but that it willingly flows downward. Every drop naturally seeks the lowest place, the valley, the riverbed, the places that people often ignore or avoid. Lao Tzu saw in this simple movement one of nature's greatest lessons. Human beings spend much of their lives trying to rise above others. They seek higher status, greater recognition, more influence, more wealth, more authority, and more admiration. Entire societies are built around climbing invisible ladders. Success is often measured by elevation, higher positions, larger houses on hills, greater titles, larger audiences, stronger reputations. Yet water, which nourishes every living thing, never climbs for the sake of climbing. It descends, it gathers in the valleys, it embraces the lowest places without complaint. Instead of seeing this as weakness, Lao Tzu recognized it as one of nature's deepest expressions of wisdom. This idea immediately challenges the ordinary understanding of ambition. Modern culture often teaches that value comes from being noticed. Children are encouraged to stand out. Professionals are encouraged to outperform colleagues. Public figures compete for visibility. Even acts of kindness sometimes become performances designed to attract admiration. The desire to be seen gradually becomes inseparable from the desire to feel worthy. Lao Tzu questioned this entire pattern. Water never asks to be admired. It simply fulfills its purpose. Because it does not compete for attention, it becomes essential to every form of life. This paradox reveals something profound about humility. In ordinary thinking, humility is often mistaken for low self-esteem, passivity, or lack of confidence. Lao Tzu means something entirely different. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is no longer being obsessed with yourself. Water never announces its importance. Yet forests depend on it. Crops depend on it. Animals depend on it. Entire civilizations have always depended upon rivers. The most necessary things rarely demand applause. When Lao Tzu says that the highest goodness resembles water, he points toward a way of living that serves naturally rather than seeking constant recognition. Water nourishes all things without asking for repayment. It does not choose only beautiful flowers while refusing weeds. It falls equally upon mountains, villages, deserts, kings, and beggars. It does not discriminate according to social status. This impartial generosity reflects the Tao itself. Nature continuously gives without calculating personal advantage. Human beings often experience disappointment because generosity becomes tied to expectation. People give affection, expecting appreciation. They offer help, expecting loyalty. They perform kindness, hoping to receive admiration. When those expectations remain unmet, resentment appears. Water demonstrates another possibility. It gives because giving is simply its nature. Rain does not expect gratitude. Rivers do not demand applause. Springs do not issue invoices. Their fulfillment lies in flowing. Lao Tzu believed this principle could transform relationships. Many conflicts arise because people constantly negotiate invisible exchanges. I gave more than you. You did not appreciate my effort after everything I have done. These calculations quietly poison love, friendship, and cooperation. Water keeps no ledger. It continues nourishing life regardless of who notices. Humility also changes the way one relates to knowledge. Those who constantly seek to appear intelligent often stop learning. Pride creates intellectual rigidity. Once someone becomes attached to being right, curiosity begins to disappear. Water, however, never assumes it has already arrived. It continues moving, adapting, receiving new pathways. Likewise, a humble mind remains teachable throughout life. This explains one of the Tao Te Ching's recurring themes. Emptiness creates usefulness. A cup functions because it is empty. A room becomes livable because of the empty space inside its walls. Likewise, a humble person possesses inner space. New ideas can enter, different perspectives can be considered. Mistakes can become teachers instead of enemies. Pride fills every available space. Humility leaves room for growth. Consider how rivers are formed. Countless tiny streams descend from mountains into lower valleys. Alone, they seem insignificant. Together, they become rivers capable of sustaining entire ecosystems. None of these streams refuses to descend because it considers itself too important. Their willingness to flow downward creates abundance. Lao Tzu recognized the same principle within leadership. Most rulers sought elevation above their people. They surrounded themselves with ceremonies, titles, guards, and symbols of superiority. Distance reinforced authority. Yet the Tao Te Ching proposes almost the opposite model. The best leader places themselves beneath the people in the same way the sea lies below every river. Because the ocean occupies the lowest place, every river willingly flows toward it. Its greatness comes from receiving rather than dominating. This image remains remarkably relevant today. Leaders who constantly seek personal recognition often create organizations driven by fear. Employees become reluctant to share ideas. Mistakes become hidden. Innovation disappears because everyone fears criticism. In contrast, humble leaders create environments where others flourish. They listen more than they speak. They acknowledge mistakes openly. They celebrate collective success instead of personal glory. Ironically, these leaders often earn far greater respect precisely because they are not chasing it. Water demonstrates that influence does not require self-promotion. Another reason water seeks the lowest places is that valleys collect life. Fertile civilizations have almost always emerged near rivers and floodplains rather than mountain peaks. High places offer impressive views, but limited nourishment. Valleys receive, they gather, they sustain. Spiritually, this suggests that inner emptiness becomes fertile ground for wisdom. People often attempt to fill every silence with noise, every schedule with activity, every conversation with opinions. They fear stillness because stillness confronts them with themselves. Yet water naturally rests in quiet places. Deep lakes remain remarkably calm beneath their surfaces. Although storms disturb the top, tremendous stillness exists below. Lao Tzu invites human beings toward this same interior depth. A person who constantly seeks external validation becomes emotionally dependent upon circumstances. Praise creates happiness. Criticism creates despair. Success creates confidence. Failure creates insecurity. Such a life resembles leaves blown by changing winds. Water teaches another form of stability. Its identity does not depend upon temporary conditions. Whether flowing rapidly or resting quietly, it remains water. Whether frozen into ice or rising as vapor, its essential nature remains unchanged. Likewise, humility allows individuals to remain internally steady, regardless of external praise or criticism. This becomes especially important during success. Failure often teaches humility automatically. Success presents a greater danger because it quietly feeds the ego. People begin believing their achievements make them inherently superior. Recognition becomes addictive. Identity gradually shifts from being to appearing. Lao Tzu repeatedly warns against this trap. The moment one becomes obsessed with being above others, separation begins. Comparison replaces connection. Competition replaces cooperation. Anxiety replaces peace because whatever rises through ego must constantly fear falling. Water knows no such fear. It never worries about being low, because being low is precisely what allows it to fulfill its purpose. One of the most beautiful expressions of this principle appears in the relationship between mountains and rivers. Mountains seem majestic because they stand high above the landscape. Yet without water flowing below them, their beauty becomes barren. Snow eventually melts, rain eventually descends. Every mountain depends upon valleys it can never become. Likewise, every great achievement depends upon countless humble contributions that rarely receive recognition. A famous author depends upon teachers who first taught reading. A successful entrepreneur depends upon employees whose names history rarely remembers. Scientific breakthroughs depend upon generations of previous discoveries. Parents quietly shape futures without appearing in history books. Farmers nourish cities while remaining largely invisible. Water reminds us that life's deepest contributions often occur beyond public attention. Humility also transforms conflict. When insulted, pride immediately seeks retaliation. The ego experiences every disagreement as a threat to identity. Water responds differently. Throw a stone into a lake and ripples eventually disappear. The lake does not preserve permanent resentment against the stone. It absorbs disturbance and gradually returns to stillness. Lao Tzu does not suggest becoming passive toward injustice. Rather, he distinguishes between responding wisely and reacting emotionally. The humble person possesses nothing to defend except truth itself. This freedom creates extraordinary resilience. Consider bamboo during a storm. It bends dramatically while rigid branches snap. The bamboo loses nothing essential by yielding temporarily. After the storm passes, it stands upright once again. Humility functions similarly. Those who refuse to bend often break under pressures that flexible people survive. The ego interprets adaptation as defeat. Wisdom recognizes adaptation as intelligence. Water therefore becomes the perfect symbol of resilience. It never resists reality unnecessarily. If blocked, it waits. If redirected, it flows elsewhere. If evaporated, it rises. If condensed, it falls again. Nothing permanently interrupts its journey because it never insists upon one particular form. Human beings often attach themselves to fixed expectations. Careers must unfold exactly as planned. Relationships must never change. Circumstances must remain comfortable. When reality inevitably shifts, suffering intensifies because the mind clings to what no longer exists. Water teaches graceful transition. Its willingness to change allows continuity where rigidity creates collapse. Lao Tzu likely observed countless rivers throughout his life. He noticed that the deepest waters usually appeared the calmest. Shallow streams often made the greatest noise because every small obstacle disturbed them. Likewise, shallow confidence frequently announces itself loudly. Genuine wisdom rarely needs to advertise. This explains why truly wise individuals often appear remarkably ordinary. They do not constantly prove themselves. They do not dominate every conversation. They do not seek victory in every disagreement. Like deep water, they possess quiet strength. Their presence calms others because they themselves remain undisturbed. Such people become trustworthy precisely because their identity no longer depends upon appearing important. This is one of humility's greatest gifts. It liberates individuals from the exhausting burden of maintaining an image. Pretending requires constant effort. Authenticity requires none. Water never performs, it simply flows. This simplicity hides extraordinary freedom. Lao Tzu understood that many forms of suffering arise not from circumstances themselves, but from the endless performance of identity. People strive to appear successful, intelligent, attractive, influential, spiritual, or indispensable. Each performance demands continual maintenance. Fear of losing the image becomes a lifelong prison. Water possesses no image to protect. Its only concern is remaining faithful to its nature. Perhaps this is why Lao Tzu became so fascinated by it. In every river, he saw a silent teacher demonstrating that true greatness does not arise from climbing above others, but from serving life itself. Just as every stream willingly descends until it joins the sea, the wisest human beings discover that fulfillment comes not through self-exaltation, but through humility. The lower water flows, the more life it carries. The humbler the person becomes, the more peace, wisdom, compassion, and quiet strength naturally begin flowing through them. Water never forces its way. The Taoist secret of effortless action, Wu Wei. Perhaps no aspect of water fascinated Lao Tzu more than the fact that it accomplishes everything without appearing to struggle. Rivers travel thousands of miles across continents. They nourish forests, carve canyons, sustain civilizations, and eventually reach the sea. Yet nowhere along this journey does water appear tense. It does not hurry because of impatience, nor does it stop because of fear. It simply moves according to its nature. From this observation, Lao Tzu developed one of the central principles of Taoist philosophy, Wu Wei, often translated as effortless action, non-forcing, or action in harmony with the Tao. Among all the teachings in the Tao Te Ching, none has been more misunderstood. Many assume Wu Wei encourages laziness or inactivity. Lao Tzu meant precisely the opposite. Water is never inactive. It is constantly moving, constantly shaping the world, constantly participating in life. The difference is that it does not waste energy resisting reality. It acts with the current of existence instead of against it. Human beings often confuse effort with effectiveness. Modern culture celebrates relentless hustle, endless productivity, and constant busyness. People admire those who sleep less, work more, answer every message immediately, and fill every hour with activity. Exhaustion has almost become a symbol of importance. If someone is always busy, society assumes they must be accomplishing something meaningful. Lao Tzu quietly questions this assumption. He invites us to observe nature. Does the sun strain to rise every morning? Does spring struggle to replace winter? Do trees force themselves to grow? Every living process unfolds with remarkable precision, yet none of it resembles the frantic pace of human ambition. Water becomes the perfect demonstration of this natural efficiency. A river does not wake each morning with a list of goals. It does not become anxious about reaching the ocean before sunset. It simply responds to each moment as it arrives. If the land slopes downward, it flows. If rocks appear, it curves around them. If rain increases its volume, it expands. If drought reduces its flow, it adapts. Every action arises naturally from present conditions rather than from rigid expectations. Lao Tzu believed that much of human suffering begins when people stop responding to reality and begin fighting their own mental projections. They become attached to specific outcomes, precise timelines, carefully constructed identities, and fixed definitions of success. When life inevitably unfolds differently, frustration appears. Instead of adapting, they push harder. Instead of listening, they insist. Instead of flowing, they force. Water never forces. This simple truth contains enormous wisdom. Imagine placing your hand in front of a stream. Water does not become angry because you interrupted its path. It simply finds another way. Remove your hand, and it immediately continues forward. Its energy is never consumed by resentment. It has no desire to prove itself stronger than the obstacle. Its only purpose is to keep flowing. How different this is from human behavior. When people encounter resistance, they often interpret it as a personal attack. A delayed opportunity becomes proof that life is unfair. A disagreement becomes evidence of disrespect. A failed plan becomes a reason to doubt themselves. Instead of responding creatively, they become emotionally trapped by the obstacle itself. Lao Tzu suggests another possibility. Perhaps resistance is not always something to conquer. Sometimes it is something to understand. Water teaches discernment. It knows when to flow quickly and when to remain still. During winter, it becomes ice. During summer, it evaporates into clouds. During storms, it becomes torrents. During calm seasons, it reflects the sky like polished glass. None of these forms is inherently superior. Each emerges naturally from the conditions of the moment. Wu Wei invites human beings into this same responsiveness. This does not mean abandoning responsibility. It means abandoning unnecessary struggle. There is a profound difference between working hard and fighting reality. A farmer still plants seeds. A carpenter still shapes wood. A musician still practices scales. A physician still studies medicine. Wu Wei does not eliminate disciplined effort. It eliminates wasted effort. The farmer cannot force crops to grow faster by shouting at the soil. The carpenter cannot improve wood by arguing with its grain. The musician cannot master an instrument through frustration. Each succeeds by cooperating with natural processes. Water never argues with gravity. Likewise, wisdom does not argue with reality. One of the reasons people force situations is fear. They fear losing opportunities. They fear being left behind. They fear appearing unsuccessful. They fear uncertainty. This fear creates urgency where patience would be more effective. Consider someone searching desperately for the perfect relationship. The more anxious they become, the more they attempt to control every conversation, every impression, every interaction. Ironically, this tension often pushes others away. Water demonstrates another approach. It attracts rather than chases. Rivers do not pursue tributaries. Tributaries naturally join them because of the way the landscape is arranged. Lao Tzu believed that much of life unfolds similarly. When individuals become deeply aligned with the Tao, opportunities often arise naturally because their actions fit the circumstances rather than opposing them. This principle also applies to leadership. Many leaders believe control creates order. They establish increasingly detailed rules, monitor every decision, and attempt to eliminate uncertainty. Initially, this appears effective. Eventually, creativity disappears. People become dependent rather than responsible. Innovation slows because everyone waits for permission. The Tao Te Ching presents a radically different image. The greatest leader governs almost invisibly. Like water nourishing roots beneath the surface, their influence is often unseen. People feel trusted rather than controlled. Responsibility grows naturally because freedom exists. When success finally arrives, the people say, "We accomplished this ourselves." This is leadership through Wu Wei, not absence of leadership, invisible leadership. Water also teaches timing. One of humanity's greatest mistakes is believing that every problem requires immediate action. Sometimes waiting is wiser than acting. Consider muddy water. If someone continually stirs it, it remains cloudy. If left undisturbed, the sediment gradually settles and clarity returns by itself. Lao Tzu repeatedly returns to this image because the human mind behaves similarly. During emotional turmoil, people often make their worst decisions. Anger demands immediate responses. Fear demands immediate escape. Excitement demands immediate commitment. Yet clarity rarely emerges from agitation, like muddy water. The mind often requires stillness before truth becomes visible. Wu Wei therefore includes the wisdom of waiting. Waiting is not passivity. Waiting can be profound participation. Seeds appear inactive beneath the soil. Yet enormous transformation occurs long before the first sprout emerges. Pregnancy unfolds over months because life cannot be rushed. A child learns language gradually. Friendship deepens over years. Trust cannot be manufactured overnight. Water understands development. It never attempts to skip necessary stages. Human beings frequently do. Modern technology has conditioned people to expect immediate results. Information arrives instantly. Purchases arrive quickly. Messages travel across the world in seconds. Gradually, the mind begins expecting life itself to operate according to the same speed. Nature refuses. The deepest transformations still require time. Character develops slowly. Wisdom matures through experience. Healing follows its own rhythm. Water reminds us that life cannot be hurried without losing something essential. Another remarkable quality of water is its complete absence of internal conflict. A river never wonders whether it should become a lake. Rain never envies snow. Clouds never compare themselves with oceans. Each expression fulfills its purpose. Human beings, however, constantly divide themselves. Part of the mind wants rest. Another part demands productivity. One desire seeks simplicity. Another craves recognition. One voice longs for peace. Another insists that happiness lies just beyond the next achievement. This internal fragmentation consumes enormous energy. Wu Wei begins with inner integration. When action emerges from the whole person rather than conflicting impulses, it becomes effortless in the deepest sense. Athletes sometimes describe entering a state known as the zone. Movements become fluid. Time seems to slow. Thought disappears. Action unfolds naturally. Musicians experience similar moments. Artists lose awareness of themselves while creating. Writers find words arriving without strain. These experiences resemble Wu Wei. Skill remains present. Discipline remains present. Yet the ego temporarily steps aside. Action flows without self-conscious interference. Lao Tzu believed this state need not remain limited to extraordinary moments. It could become a way of living. Every conversation, every meal, every walk, every decision, each could arise naturally from presence instead of anxious calculation. Water demonstrates this continuously. It never hesitates because it never separates itself from the present moment. Wherever it is, it fully participates. This quality becomes especially important during adversity. When unexpected hardship appears, people often waste precious energy wishing reality were different. They replay alternate scenarios. They blame themselves. They blame others. They imagine impossible pasts. Meanwhile, the present remains unattended. Water cannot flow yesterday. It can only flow now. This complete acceptance of the present gives it extraordinary resilience. Acceptance does not mean approval. A river flowing around a fallen tree does not approve of the obstacle. It simply refuses to become trapped by it. Likewise, Wu Wei teaches engagement without resistance. Reality becomes the starting point rather than the enemy. One of the most beautiful expressions of effortless action appears in calligraphy, an art deeply influenced by Taoist philosophy. A master calligrapher does not force each brushstroke. Years of disciplined practice eventually disappear into spontaneous expression. If the artist begins overthinking every movement, the brush becomes stiff, the living quality vanishes. Perfection cannot be manufactured through tension. It appears when preparation and surrender become one. Life itself resembles this art. Preparation matters, discipline matters, learning matters. Yet eventually there comes a moment when one must stop controlling and begin trusting. Water embodies this trust completely. It does not know every curve awaiting it downstream. It does not possess maps of the entire river. It responds one movement at a time. Surprisingly, this proves sufficient. Human beings often demand certainty before taking action. They want guarantees, complete plans, absolute security. Life rarely offers these. The river reaches the ocean without ever seeing the entire journey at once. Lao Tzu invites us to live similarly, not recklessly, but faithfully, responding fully to each present moment instead of becoming paralyzed by imaginary futures. Another lesson hidden within Wu Wei concerns energy itself. Forcing consumes enormous strength. Fighting every circumstance creates exhaustion. Many people today feel constantly tired not because they work too much physically, but because they resist life psychologically. They argue internally with reality from morning until night. Water spends no energy complaining. Every drop contributes entirely to movement. Nothing is divided, nothing is wasted. This unified energy explains its incredible endurance. Centuries pass, empires rise and collapse, languages disappear, civilizations change. Still rivers continue flowing toward the sea, not through violence, not through ambition, not through domination, through faithful continuity. This may be one of Lao Tzu's greatest insights. The most powerful life is not necessarily the busiest, the loudest, or the most aggressive. It is the life most deeply aligned with reality itself. Like water, such a life appears remarkably simple from the outside. Yet beneath that simplicity lies immense wisdom. Water accomplishes its purpose not by overpowering the world, but by cooperating with it completely. In this quiet cooperation, Lao Tzu discovered the living expression of the Tao. To live according to Wu Wei is not to stop acting. It is to stop forcing. When action and reality finally move together like river and current, effort no longer feels like struggle. It becomes flow. And perhaps that is why, after observing countless rivers throughout his life, Lao Tzu concluded that no teacher explains the Tao more clearly than water itself. Water is patient. How time becomes the greatest ally of the Tao modern life teaches that speed is power. Faster communication, faster transportation, faster decisions, faster results. Every year, technology shortens the distance between desire and fulfillment. A message crosses the world in seconds. Information appears instantly. Purchases arrive within days or even hours. Gradually, people begin believing that everything valuable should happen immediately. When progress seems slow, frustration appears. When success takes years instead of months, doubt replaces confidence. Yet water has never shared humanity's obsession with speed. It follows another rhythm entirely. This fascinated Lao Tzu. He understood that while people admire dramatic victories, nature accomplishes its greatest works through quiet patience. Mountains are not carved in a single storm. Forests are not grown in a season. Rivers do not reach the sea by rushing recklessly. Instead, they continue moving with remarkable consistency, allowing time itself to become their greatest companion. One of the most extraordinary characteristics of water is that it never appears to hurry, yet it is never truly delayed. A river flowing toward the ocean does not wake each morning worried about how many miles remain. It does not compare itself with neighboring rivers. It does not fear arriving too late. Every moment of its journey is complete in itself, while simultaneously contributing to the larger destination. Lao Tzu saw in this movement a profound lesson about human life. Much suffering arises because people become more attached to the future than faithful to the present. Their attention constantly races ahead toward imagined destinations. They postpone happiness until certain goals are achieved. Believing fulfillment waits just beyond the next accomplishment. Water knows nothing of postponed existence. Every bend in the river is fully lived. Every curve belongs to the journey. Nothing is treated merely as a means to an end. This radically changes the experience of life. Many people spend decades chasing success, imagining that peace will finally arrive after promotion, retirement, financial security, recognition, or some future achievement. Yet every milestone quickly becomes another starting point. Satisfaction fades because the mind immediately creates another destination. Lao Tzu recognized this endless cycle long before modern psychology described it. The human mind rarely rests because it constantly projects fulfillment into tomorrow. Water refuses this illusion. Its purpose unfolds continuously rather than eventually. This understanding transforms the meaning of patience. Patience is often misunderstood as passive waiting. Someone sits quietly while circumstances slowly improve. Lao Tzu means something entirely different. Water is never inactive while being patient. Every second it continues shaping the world. Although individual movements appear insignificant, their cumulative effect becomes astonishing. Consider one drop of water falling upon stone. Nothing seems to happen. A second drop follows. Again, nothing appears different. Thousands of drops continue falling. Still little changes. Years pass. The surface begins to soften. Centuries pass. Solid rock develops openings. Millennia pass. Entire caves emerge beneath mountains. At no point did water become discouraged because immediate results were invisible. Its faithfulness never depended upon visible progress. Human beings often abandon meaningful work because results fail to appear quickly. A person begins exercising enthusiastically. After 2 weeks, the mirror shows little difference. Motivation declines. Someone begins learning a musical instrument. The first months feel awkward. Frustration replaces excitement. Another person starts writing a book. The pages accumulate slowly. Doubt whispers that the effort is pointless. Water teaches another perspective. Transformation frequently remains invisible long before it becomes undeniable. Roots grow beneath the soil before branches appear above it. Seeds split open in darkness before anyone witnesses new life. Pregnancy develops quietly before birth announces itself. Nature repeatedly demonstrates that the most important changes begin where no one can see them. Lao Tzu invites us to trust these hidden processes. Patience also changes our relationship with obstacles. When people demand immediate success, every difficulty feels permanent. A delayed opportunity becomes failure. A closed door becomes rejection. An unexpected setback becomes evidence that the journey was mistaken. Water never interprets temporary barriers this way. When encountering a large rock, the river does not conclude that its journey has ended. It simply continues. Perhaps around the obstacle, perhaps beneath it, perhaps slowly wearing it away over many years. Its confidence comes not from certainty about the exact path, but from trust in continuous movement. This distinction is crucial. Many people seek certainty. Water seeks continuity. Lao Tzu believed continuity possesses greater power than certainty because reality itself constantly changes. Plans become outdated, circumstances evolve, unexpected opportunities appear. Those who remain faithful to movement rather than rigid expectations adapt naturally. This explains why patience is inseparable from flexibility. Rigid people often become impatient because reality refuses to match their schedules. Flexible people discover that delays sometimes reveal better pathways. Water never mistakes detours for defeat. Another remarkable lesson emerges from observing rivers during seasons of drought. When rainfall decreases, rivers become smaller. Their pace often slows. Some disappear beneath the earth entirely. To casual observers, they seem gone. Yet underground they continue flowing quietly until conditions change. Eventually springs emerge again. Streams return. Life continues. Lao Tzu likely saw in this cycle an image of human resilience. There are seasons when outward progress becomes impossible. Illness interrupts ambitions. Loss changes priorities. Unexpected hardship alters every plan. During such times, society often encourages frantic recovery. Return quickly, produce more, move faster, prove yourself again. Water suggests another response. Honor the season. Winter is not a failure of spring. Night is not a failure of day. Silence is not a failure of speech. Every phase belongs to life's larger rhythm. Those who fight natural seasons often multiply unnecessary suffering. This principle becomes especially important in spiritual growth. Many people expect enlightenment, wisdom, or inner peace to arrive suddenly. They seek dramatic experiences that permanently eliminate confusion or emotional struggle. The Tao Te Ching presents a quieter vision. Wisdom accumulates gradually. One patient decision, one honest conversation, one moment of stillness, one act of compassion. Like water filling an empty vessel, transformation occurs through countless ordinary moments. Nothing spectacular may happen today, yet today's faithfulness quietly shapes tomorrow's character. Lao Tzu repeatedly reminds readers that nature never rushes, yet nothing remains unfinished. This observation directly challenges humanity's fear of missing out. People compare timelines constantly. Someone else achieved success earlier, another person married sooner, someone became wealthy younger. Comparison creates invisible deadlines that nature never established. Water compares itself with nothing. A mountain stream flows differently than a great river. Both fulfill their purpose. A quiet pond reflects the moon. A waterfall generates tremendous force. Neither envies the other. Each expresses the Tao according to its own circumstances. Human beings often forget this. They measure themselves against lives they were never meant to live. Patience restores individuality. It allows each person to unfold according to their own rhythm rather than society's expectations. This freedom eliminates enormous psychological pressure. Another aspect of water's patience appears in erosion. People usually imagine erosion as destruction. Lao Tzu likely saw creation within it. Old forms gradually disappear so new landscapes can emerge. Likewise, time quietly erodes rigid identities. Youth becomes maturity. Certainty becomes wisdom. Pride becomes humility. Loss deepens compassion. Experiences slowly reshape character in ways impossible to predict. The impatient mind resists this process. It clings desperately to familiar versions of itself. Water accepts continual transformation. It understands that remaining alive requires remaining open to change. Patience, therefore, becomes an expression of trust, not blind optimism, trust in the intelligence of life itself. This trust becomes particularly valuable during uncertainty. Most anxiety concerns imagined futures. What if this fails? What if I lose everything? What if nothing improves? These questions arise because the mind demands immediate certainty about events that have not yet occurred. Water possesses no such demand. It cannot know every turn awaiting it downstream. Yet, it continues flowing. Lao Tzu believed human beings could discover similar peace by participating fully in the present, rather than attempting to control unknowable futures. This does not eliminate planning. Planning remains useful. Attachment does not. There is a profound difference. A gardener prepares the soil carefully, yet the gardener cannot command the seed to sprout tomorrow. Patience completes what preparation begins. Without patience, preparation becomes frustration. Without preparation, patience becomes laziness. Water unites both perfectly. It continuously moves while allowing time to perform its invisible work. One of the greatest paradoxes within the Tao Te Ching is that slowing down often allows life to move more effectively. People rushing constantly overlook opportunities. They interrupt conversations before understanding. They make decisions before seeing clearly. They react before observing completely. Water never reacts impulsively. It responds. Response requires presence. Reaction requires only emotion. This distinction changes everything. Consider a deep lake after heavy rain. The surface may become turbulent, waves appear, visibility decreases, yet below the surface, profound stillness remains. Eventually, the storm passes. The lake becomes clear again without forcing itself to become calm. Likewise, patient individuals allow emotional storms to settle naturally before acting. They recognize that clarity often returns by itself when unnecessary movement ceases. Modern neuroscience increasingly confirms what Lao Tzu intuited centuries ago. Strong emotions temporarily reduce clear reasoning. Important decisions made during anger, fear, or panic frequently create regret. Water demonstrates another path. Wait, observe, allow turbulence to settle, then move naturally. Patience also transforms relationships. Trust cannot be accelerated. Forgiveness cannot be demanded. Love cannot be manufactured. Parents often wish children would mature more quickly. Teachers sometimes become discouraged by slow learning. Friends expect immediate understanding. Yet every meaningful relationship develops according to rhythms impossible to force. Water nourishes roots long before flowers appear. Likewise, quiet acts of consistency often strengthen relationships more than dramatic gestures. A single conversation rarely transforms a marriage. Years of faithful listening often do. One apology seldom rebuilds trust. Consistent integrity eventually does. Lao Tzu admired this hidden accumulation. Water never despises small beginnings. Every ocean consists entirely of individual drops. Every mighty river begins as tiny springs. Every canyon begins with almost invisible erosion. Greatness emerges through continuity rather than spectacle. This insight also applies to personal discipline. People often seek dramatic change, radical diets, extreme exercise, sudden reinvention. These approaches frequently collapse because intensity exceeds sustainability. Water teaches another method, small movements, repeated faithfully, day after day, year after year. Eventually, they reshape entire landscapes. The Tao works similarly. Tiny moments of awareness gradually transform consciousness. Brief daily silence slowly deepens into lasting peace. Simple honesty becomes trustworthy character. Regular kindness becomes compassion. None of these changes appear dramatic while they are occurring, yet over decades they become unmistakable. Water never doubts the power of accumulation. Human beings often do. Perhaps this explains why Lao Tzu continually returned to rivers instead of storms. Storms impress observers. Rivers transform the earth. Modern culture celebrates dramatic breakthroughs. The Tao celebrates faithful continuity. Time itself becomes an invisible partner for those who stop fighting it. Every sunrise continues the work begun yesterday. Every season contributes to life's unfolding. Nothing meaningful is wasted. Even apparent delays often become essential preparation. Water understands this perfectly. It never believes that slow means unsuccessful. It never mistakes stillness for failure. It never abandons its journey because progress appears invisible. Instead, it continues quietly, patiently, faithfully, century after century, drop after drop, until mountains become valleys, stone becomes sand, rivers reach oceans, and life itself quietly reveals that the greatest transformations rarely happen all at once. They happen the way water has always moved, without hurry, without fear, without forcing, simply remaining faithful to the path that the Tao unfolds, one moment at a time, becoming like water, the ultimate lesson of the Tao Te Ching. After examining water from every possible angle, its softness, its humility, its effortless action, and its extraordinary patience, we arrive at the question that lies beneath the entire Tao Te Ching. Why did Lao Tzu return to this image again and again? Why not fire, which inspires awe? Why not mountains, which symbolize stability? Why not the wind, which moves freely across the earth? Among all the elements of nature, why did water become the supreme teacher? The answer gradually reveals itself as one reads the Tao Te Ching from beginning to end. Water is not merely one symbol among many. It is the closest visible expression of the Tao itself. Every quality that Lao Tzu admired in the Tao appears naturally in water. It does not argue. It does not boast. It does not force. It does not compete. It nourishes without possessing. It transforms without seeking recognition. It adapts without losing its essential nature. To become like water, therefore, is not to imitate an element of nature. It is to rediscover the original rhythm of existence itself. Lao Tzu understood that human beings enter the world remarkably similar to water. Children possess extraordinary flexibility. They learn naturally. They adapt quickly. They forgive easily. They remain curious. They cry freely. They laugh without calculation. Their identity has not yet hardened into fixed ideas about who they must become. Gradually, however, life begins adding layers. Society teaches comparison, schools reward competition, workplaces emphasize performance, culture glorifies status, fear encourages control. The mind slowly becomes rigid. Instead of flowing naturally, people begin carrying invisible armor everywhere they go. This armor consists of opinions that cannot be questioned, identities that cannot change, expectations that must be fulfilled, ambitions that define personal worth, resentments preserved for years, regrets replayed endlessly, anxieties projected into futures that do not yet exist. Little by little, the living river becomes trapped behind psychological dams. Lao Tzu observed this transformation with great sadness. He believed that most suffering does not arise because people are inherently flawed. It arises because they have forgotten their original nature. Water never forgets. Whether appearing as snow upon distant mountains, mist floating above valleys, gentle rain nourishing fields, or mighty rivers reaching the sea, it always remains true to itself. Its forms change continuously. Its essence never does. This distinction becomes one of the deepest spiritual insights in Taoism. Life constantly changes, circumstances change, bodies age, relationships evolve, societies transform, entire civilizations appear and disappear. Yet beneath every changing form exists something constant. Lao Tzu called this the Tao. Water becomes its perfect mirror, because it demonstrates that identity need not depend upon fixed form. Modern people often define themselves through temporary conditions. I am my career. I am my success. I am my reputation. I am my possessions. I am my failures. I am my past. Every one of these identities eventually becomes unstable because every external condition eventually changes. Water offers another possibility. It teaches identity through essence rather than appearance. Ice does not stop being water. Steam does not stop being water. Rain does not stop being water. Likewise, the deepest self remains present through every stage of life. Understanding this brings remarkable freedom. Loss becomes less terrifying. Success becomes less intoxicating. Failure becomes less permanent. Everything begins flowing within a much larger perspective. Lao Tzu repeatedly reminds readers that resisting change creates suffering. This does not mean change is always comfortable. Water itself sometimes crashes through violent rapids. Storms disturb peaceful lakes. Floods reshape entire landscapes. Yet even these dramatic moments belong to larger natural cycles. Human beings often assume difficult seasons represent mistakes. The Tao suggests otherwise. Perhaps hardship belongs to life, just as winter belongs to the year. Without winter, many seeds never awaken. Without darkness, stars remain invisible. Without silence, music loses meaning. Without emptiness, nothing new can enter. Water accepts every season because it knows no season lasts forever. One of the greatest fears people carry is the fear of uncertainty. The future appears hidden, plans collapse unexpectedly, health changes, economies fluctuate, relationships evolve, entire lives can change within a single day. Because certainty seems impossible, anxiety becomes constant. Lao Tzu points toward water as an antidote. Notice that a river never knows every bend awaiting it. It cannot see the entire journey from mountain spring to distant ocean. Nevertheless, it keeps moving, not recklessly, not blindly, simply responding completely to each present moment. This trust becomes one of Taoism's defining characteristics. Not trust that life will always be comfortable. Trust that reality possesses deeper intelligence than fear can perceive. Water also teaches the remarkable art of letting go. One of humanity's greatest struggles is attachment. People cling to old identities, old victories, old injuries, old relationships, old expectations. Even painful memories sometimes become cherished simply because they feel familiar. Water cannot flow while holding yesterday. Every second it releases what has already passed. The water touching your hand now will never return. Its willingness to let go creates continuous renewal. Lao Tzu invites readers into the same freedom. Forgiveness becomes possible because the past no longer imprisons the present. Creativity becomes possible because old patterns no longer dominate perception. Peace becomes possible because life is no longer measured against memories that cannot be recreated. This does not mean forgetting. It means no longer living inside what has already ended. Water always arrives fresh. Another extraordinary lesson concerns simplicity. Throughout history, humanity has often mistaken complexity for intelligence. The more complicated an explanation appears, the more profound it seems. Lao Tzu quietly reverses this assumption. Nature operates through astonishing simplicity. Gravity requires no committee. Spring requires no announcement. Flowers bloom without strategic planning. Birds migrate without philosophical debate. Water flows without motivational speeches. Its wisdom lies precisely in its simplicity. Human beings complicate existence by constantly adding unnecessary layers, endless comparison, endless consumption, endless ambition, endless distraction. The Tao Te Ching repeatedly encourages subtraction rather than accumulation, not because achievement is wrong, but because unnecessary excess obscures what already exists. Water never attempts to become more than water. It fulfills its purpose completely by remaining exactly what it is. This may be one of Lao Tzu's most radical teachings. Fulfillment does not require becoming someone else. It requires becoming fully yourself. Of course, this raises an important question. If becoming like water is so natural, why is it so difficult? Lao Tzu would likely answer that people have become addicted to control. The ego believes security comes from domination. If only every circumstance could be predicted. If only every relationship could be managed. If only every outcome could be guaranteed. Then peace would finally arrive. Water exposes this illusion. No river controls the weather, no ocean controls the moon, no cloud controls the wind. Yet together they create astonishing harmony. Harmony emerges not through domination, but through participation. This insight transforms spirituality itself. Many people imagine spiritual growth as escaping ordinary life, retreating from society, rejecting the world, seeking extraordinary mystical experiences. The Tao Te Ching suggests something much quieter. Observe water, drink tea, walk through forests, listen more carefully, speak less unnecessarily, release what no longer serves, respond rather than react. Trust the rhythm of seasons, become present. In these ordinary acts, extraordinary wisdom gradually appears. There is no separation between spiritual life and daily life. The Tao flows through both equally. One of the most beautiful qualities of water is that it reflects without clinging. A still lake mirrors mountains perfectly. Clouds appear upon its surface. Stars shine within it at night. Yet none of these reflections remain. When the image changes, the lake does not mourn its disappearance. The surface simply reflects whatever is present now. Human consciousness can function similarly. Thoughts arise, emotions arise, experiences arise. Instead of clinging to each one, awareness simply witnesses them. Meditation within many Eastern traditions reflects this principle. The mind becomes like clear water. Thoughts continue appearing, but they no longer dominate. Clarity gradually replaces confusion. Lao Tzu recognized that wisdom begins not by controlling the mind, but by allowing it to become still enough to reflect reality accurately. This image becomes especially meaningful in today's world. Modern life constantly agitates attention. Notifications interrupt silence. Advertisements stimulate endless desire. News cycles encourage continuous outrage. Entertainment fills every quiet moment. The surface of consciousness rarely becomes still. A constantly disturbed lake cannot reflect the moon clearly. Likewise, an endlessly distracted mind struggles to perceive truth. Water invites another rhythm: silence, observation, presence. From this stillness, insight naturally emerges. Another reason water fascinated Lao Tzu is that it benefits everything it touches while demanding almost nothing in return. Trees grow, animals drink, people survive, fields become fertile, entire ecosystems flourish because water quietly fulfills its purpose. Imagine if human beings approached life similarly. Instead of asking constantly, "What can I gain?" they might ask, "What can I nourish?" Instead of seeking recognition, they might seek usefulness. Instead of chasing importance, they might cultivate presence. Water never asks whether the flower deserves rain. It simply nourishes. Compassion functions similarly. It flows because compassion itself is natural, not because others have earned it. Lao Tzu believed that society would change profoundly if people stopped competing for superiority and instead quietly supported one another like rivers nourishing the land. Perhaps the greatest mystery of water is that despite being soft, humble, patient, adaptable and yielding, it remains unstoppable. Empires have attempted to control rivers. Eventually, rivers reshape the land. People build dams. Water finds new pathways. Stone walls resist for centuries. Water continues patiently wearing them away. Nothing dramatic, nothing violent, simply faithful persistence. Lao Tzu saw here the deepest expression of genuine power. Power does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it flows quietly around every obstacle until resistance naturally dissolves. The world celebrates explosions. The Tao celebrates rivers. As the Tao Te Ching approaches its conclusion, the reader gradually realizes that Lao Tzu was never truly writing about water alone. He was writing about the forgotten possibilities within every human being. Each person possesses the capacity to become more flexible than rigid, more compassionate than competitive, more patient than anxious, more responsive than controlling, more authentic than performative, more peaceful than fearful. Water reveals these possibilities because it has never abandoned them. It continues teaching every moment, though few people notice. Every rainfall repeats the lesson. Every stream whispers the same wisdom. Every ocean demonstrates humility by receiving every river. Nature has never stopped explaining the Tao. The question is whether humanity has become quiet enough to listen. Perhaps that is why Lao Tzu chose water above every other teacher. Not because it speaks loudly, but because it never stops speaking. Long after kingdoms have fallen, philosophies have changed, technologies have advanced, and civilizations have risen and disappeared, rivers still flow toward the sea exactly as they always have, patiently, humbly, effortlessly, without pride, without fear, without resistance, simply expressing the Tao through every drop. And perhaps the final invitation of the Tao Te Ching is this: do not merely admire the river, become it. Do not simply study water. Allow it to reshape the way you think, the way you lead, the way you love, the way you face hardship, and the way you move through the world. For the moment a human being stops fighting the current of existence and begins flowing with it, they discover something that Lao Tzu believed had always been waiting beneath every fear and every ambition. Not victory over life, but harmony with it. And in that harmony, the deepest secret of water and of the Tao itself is finally understood.